The stars above Earth flickered as massive ships appeared from nowhere. Hana Choi sat in her office at the International Space Defense Initiative, staring at her screen with wide eyes. 500 alien warships had just materialized in orbit. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called her supervisor. "Sir, we have a situation," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Within minutes, every space agency on Earth confirmed what Hana had detected. The ships were enormous, each one the size of a small city. They hung in space like dark clouds blocking out the stars. For 2 hours, humanity waited in silence, wondering what would happen next. Then the message came. Commander Velroth of the Vraxian Empire transmitted his ultimatum to every screen, radio, and device on Earth. His face appeared, angular and cold, with eyes that showed no emotion. He spoke in a voice that had clearly delivered this speech many times before. "People of Earth, your planet now belongs to the Vraxian Empire. You have 48 hours to surrender completely. Lay down all weapons, disband your governments, and prepare for integration into our empire. If you resist, we will destroy your cities one by one until you comply. We have conquered 47 civilizations before you. You cannot win." The transmission ended. The world fell silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then chaos erupted. Junho Kim was in his laboratory in Seoul when the message came through. As an astrophysicist, he had spent years studying the possibility of alien life. He never imagined first contact would be like this. His hands moved quickly across his keyboard, pulling up every scan of the alien ships his team could gather. "These ships use energy shields," he muttered to himself, analyzing the data. "But their technology signature is strange. It's advanced, but focused entirely on energy-based systems." His phone rang. It was the United Earth Council, hastily formed just minutes ago by every nation's leader. They needed scientists, and they needed them now. Across the city, Yuna Park sat in the cockpit of her fighter jet. The young pilot had trained for years to protect her country, but she never thought she would face aliens. Around her, other pilots prepared their aircraft. Everyone knew their missiles and bullets might be useless against alien shields, but they had to try. "Squadron Leader Park," her radio crackled. "You're being reassigned to the Earth Defense Force. Report to the Central Command." Yuna looked at the sky, where the alien ships loomed like dark moons. "On my way," she replied. In a secured bunker beneath Geneva, Taiho Lee studied tactical displays with military leaders from every nation. The veteran strategist had fought in conflicts around the world, but this was different. This was extinction-level threat. "They're expecting us to panic," Taiho said, pointing at the alien formation. "They've done this before. 47 times. They show overwhelming force, give an impossible deadline, and wait for surrender." "Can we fight them?" asked a general. Taiho was quiet for a moment. "Probably not, but we can make them regret choosing Earth." The next 12 hours changed everything. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth united completely. Old enemies became allies. Resources pooled together. Every military force coordinated under one command. The United Earth Council made decisions in minutes that would have taken years of negotiation before. Junho arrived at the Central Research Facility, where scientists from every country gathered. They had 48 hours to understand alien technology and find a weakness. He met Jiwoo Kang, a brilliant xenobiologist who was already working on theories about alien physiology. "If we can capture one alive," Jiwoo said excitedly, "we can study their biology, find weaknesses." "First, we need to survive long enough to capture one," Junho replied. As the deadline approached, humanity prepared. Every weapon was readied. Every bunker was filled. Millions of people evacuated from cities to countryside, hoping to escape the first strikes. Parents held their children. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. Everyone knew the odds were against them. Yuna stood on the runway with her squadron, looking up at the dark shapes above. Her fighter jet was loaded with everything they had. Missiles, bombs, even experimental weapons rushed into production overnight. "They think we're primitive," her wingman said nervously. "Then let's show them how primitive humans fight," Yuna replied, climbing into her cockpit. The 48 hours ended. Velroth sent another message, brief this time. You have not surrendered. Your destruction begins now. The Vraxian ships descended through the atmosphere, targeting major military installations. Their energy weapons fired bright beams that should have vaporized everything they touched. But something unexpected happened. Earth's early warning systems, developed during the Cold War, detected the energy buildup before the weapons fired. Cities evacuated seconds before strikes hit. Then, humanity struck back. Una led her squadron in the first counterattack. The alien ships were huge and powerful, but they moved slowly. Human fighters were small and fast, darting between the massive vessels like angry hornets. The aliens fired their energy weapons, but hitting a fighter jet moving at supersonic speed proved difficult. Target their engines, Una shouted into her radio. Forget the shields. Go for physical damage. Her missiles struck the rear of an alien ship. The shields absorbed most of the energy, but the kinetic impact still rattled the vessel. Other fighters followed her lead, launching missile after missile. The aliens had designed their shields to deflect energy weapons, but humanity still used explosives and kinetic weapons. Each impact did small damage, but hundreds of fighters meant hundreds of impacts. One alien ship, battered by continuous assault, began to descend faster than intended. It crashed into an empty field, and Taiho immediately dispatched special forces to secure it. In orbit, Velroth watched the battle with growing confusion. His tactical displays showed his ships were winning, but they were winning too slowly. The humans should have broken by now. Their losses were terrible. Hundreds of aircraft destroyed, thousands of soldiers dead. But they kept fighting. Commander, the humans are using primitive kinetic weapons, his tactical officer reported. Our shields were not optimized for this type of assault. They're insects, Velroth said coldly. Crush them. But the humans didn't crush easily. Hana coordinated communication networks, ensuring every unit knew where to strike. Junho analyzed every piece of data from the battle, finding patterns in alien movements. Taiho directed forces with precision, sacrificing pawns to capture alien technology. By the end of the first day, Earth had lost 30% of its military forces. But 3 Vraxian ships were destroyed, and 2 more were captured damaged on the ground. Do-Yun Park, a special forces operative, led teams into the crashed vessels, fighting alien soldiers in close combat, where the Vraxians' technology advantage meant nothing. That night, as fires burned in a dozen cities, Taiho addressed the United Earth Council. They expected us to surrender or die quickly, he said. We've done neither. Now they're confused. Confusion is a weapon we can use. Junho made his report next. I've analyzed their technology. They've never fought anyone who still uses explosive weapons. They've never faced guerrilla tactics. They follow predictable patterns because every species they conquered before gave up quickly. How long can we last? Someone asked. That's the wrong question, Taiho replied. The question is, how long can they afford to stay? Every day they're here, they're learning that conquering Earth won't be easy. We make them pay for every mile, every city, every victory. We make this invasion so costly that other species in their empire start asking questions. Una entered the room, still in her flight suit, covered in sweat and ash. My squadron is ready for tomorrow, she said simply. Velroth stared at his losses on the tactical display. 3 ships destroyed, 2 captured, nearly 1,000 Vraxian soldiers dead, against a primitive species. The High Council would have questions, but Commander Velroth had conquered 47 worlds. Earth would be the 48th, no matter the cost. He didn't yet understand that cost was exactly what humans specialized in. The Vraxians had started a war of attrition against the one species in the galaxy that refused to accept defeat. 3 months had passed since the Vraxians arrived. Commander Velroth stared at his reports with growing frustration. His invasion fleet should have conquered Earth in 3 days. Instead, humans still fought with the same intensity as day 1. Every battle was a grinding struggle. Every victory cost more than expected. The numbers told a grim story. Velroth had lost 42 ships and nearly 15,000 soldiers. Earth had lost millions of people and most of its major cities lay in ruins. By any logical measure, the humans should surrender. But logic seemed to mean nothing to these creatures. Minho Sung sat in a darkened room filled with computer screens. The young hacker had spent weeks trying to break into Vraxian communications. Other countries had cyber warfare specialists, but Minho had something special. He understood that alien technology wasn't magical, just different. He treated their systems like puzzles to solve. "Got you," he whispered as his code finally cracked through their encryption. Alien transmissions flooded his screens, automatically translating into Korean, then English. He started reading, his eyes growing wider with each message. The Vraxian Empire controlled 200 worlds. Their military followed strict protocols for everything. They had detailed manuals for planetary conquest, occupation procedures, and resistance suppression. Minho downloaded everything he could find. "Taiho, you need to see this," Minho said into his secure phone. Hours later, in the central command bunker, Taiho read through the translated documents. A slow smile spread across his face. "They've never faced guerrilla warfare," he said to the assembled commanders. "Every species they conquered either surrendered immediately or fought conventional battles. They have no protocols for insurgency, no training for urban combat, no experience with enemies who refuse to wear uniforms or hold territory." "We can use this," Yuna said. She had been promoted to air commander after her squadron destroyed 5 more alien ships. "We stop fighting their way. We fight our way." The strategy changed overnight. Instead of defending positions, human forces scattered. Small teams attacked supply lines. Fighters struck at night and disappeared. Soldiers used buildings and terrain the way guerrilla fighters had for centuries. The Vraxians, trained for organized warfare, struggled to adapt. Ji Wukong worked in a secret laboratory, studying captured Vraxian soldiers. The xenobiologist had made several important discoveries. The aliens were stronger than humans individually, but had slower reflexes. Their armor protected against energy weapons but was vulnerable to simple bullets. Most importantly, they were hive-minded. "Watch this," Jiwoo said to Junho, showing him brain scans. When separated from their command structure, individual Vraxians become confused. They're bred to follow orders, not to think creatively. It's why they're so good at following protocols but can't handle chaos. "So we create chaos," Junho said, understanding immediately. Do-hyun Park led a special forces team through the wreckage of Tokyo. They had been hunting a specific target for weeks, a grounded Vraxian command ship. Most of its crew had died in the crash, but the ship's computers contained valuable intelligence. "Movement, 3 o'clock," whispered one of his soldiers. Vraxian soldiers patrolled the area, searching for human resistance. Do-hyun's team stayed hidden, waiting. The aliens moved in perfect formation, each one maintaining exact distance from the others. Textbook military precision. Predictable. Do-hyun signaled his team. They attacked from multiple angles, using the rubble for cover. The Vraxians responded exactly as their training dictated. They formed a defensive circle and called for reinforcements. But Do-hyun's team didn't stay to fight. They threw smoke grenades and retreated into the ruins. The confused aliens waited for an attack that never came. While they held their position, Do-hyun's real team infiltrated the command ship from the opposite direction. "We're in," Do-hyun reported. "Downloading their data now." The information they recovered changed everything. Junho spent 3 days analyzing it without sleeping. What he found was both terrifying and hopeful. The Vraxian Empire was vast and powerful, but it was also slow. Their ships traveled faster than light, but their production facilities took years to build new vessels. They had conquered many worlds, but most of those conquests had been quick. Earth was their longest military engagement in 2 centuries. "They're stretched thin," Junho explained to the council. "They have ships watching hundreds of systems, troops garrisoning occupied worlds. They can't send unlimited reinforcements to Earth without weakening their empire elsewhere." "But they will send reinforcements," Taiho said. "The question is, can we survive long enough to make this invasion too expensive?" Hana intercepted another alien transmission. This one made her blood run cold. "They're requesting 50,000 more ships," she reported. "The Vraxian High Council approved it. The fleet will arrive in 2 months." The room fell silent. Earth was barely surviving against 500 ships, 50,000 more meant extinction. But Taiho smiled, and it wasn't a happy expression. Good, he said quietly. Everyone stared at him. If they're sending 50,000 ships to conquer one primitive planet, what does that tell every other species in their empire? Taiho asked. It tells them that Earth is winning. It tells them that resistance is possible. It tells them the Vraxians aren't invincible. Minho started typing furiously. If I can broadcast this information across their network, every enslaved world will know Earth is still fighting. Do it, Taiho ordered. Then he turned to Junho. How long until we can build our own faster-than-light ship? Junho looked shocked. We've only had their technology for 3 months. Building an FTL drive would take years, maybe decades. You have 6 weeks, Taiho said calmly, because we're not waiting for them to bring the fight to us anymore. We're taking it to them. The room erupted in arguments, but Taiho raised his hand for silence. We can't win by defending. We've proven that. But we can win by being unpredictable, by doing what no conquered species has ever done before. We attack them. We hit their supply bases, their shipyards, their occupied worlds. We inspire rebellions. We make them fight on 1,000 fronts instead of one. Yuna nodded slowly. It's insane, but it might work. Junho looked at the impossible timeline and sighed. I'll need every engineer on Earth. Every physicist, every technician. You'll have them, Taiho promised. While Junho assembled his team for the impossible project, Jiwoo made another discovery. She was examining Vraxian medical facilities in a captured ship when she realized something crucial. They don't have combat medics, she said in amazement. They have medical facilities on their ships, but no field medicine. When a soldier gets injured in battle, they either make it back to the ship or they die. She called Taiho immediately. We save 60% of our wounded soldiers. They save less than 10%. In a long war, that's a massive advantage. Every piece of information added to humanity's understanding. The Vraxians were powerful but rigid, advanced but predictable, strong but inflexible. They conquered quickly or not at all. They had never faced an enemy willing to lose millions and keep fighting. They had never encountered weapons they considered primitive being used effectively. They had never fought a species that treated war as a learning experience. Minho finished uploading his virus into the Vraxian network. It was subtle, designed to introduce small delays and errors. Nothing that would be immediately noticed, but enough to degrade their perfect coordination. Chaos injected into order. 6 weeks later, Junho stood before the United Earth Council with dark circles under his eyes. Behind him, engineers were still welding plates onto humanity's first faster-than-light ship. It's not pretty, he admitted. It's barely functional. It might explode. But it works. We've combined Vraxian FTL technology with human engineering. The ship can travel faster than light, and it can carry weapons. How many can we build? Taiho asked. We have materials for maybe 50 ships. They'll be crude, dangerous to pilot, and unreliable, but they'll fly. Do-Hyun volunteered to captain one immediately. Yuna volunteered her best pilots. Across Earth, soldiers and scientists raised their hands, knowing it was probably a suicide mission. Velroth received his reinforcements, but he also received troubling news. Minor rebellions had started on 3 occupied worlds. Nothing serious yet, but unusual. Enslaved species didn't rebel against the Vraxian Empire. They knew it was hopeless. Then his intelligence officers brought him more bad news. The humans had somehow cracked their communication systems. Vraxian ships were reporting small malfunctions, timing errors, coordination problems. Nothing major, but concerning. And worst of all, his scouts reported that humans were building something in hidden facilities across their planet. Something using Vraxian technology. Impossible, Velroth said. They're too primitive to reverse engineer our systems. But the evidence was clear. Somehow, impossibly, the humans were building faster-than-light ships. Destroy their construction facilities, Velroth ordered. All of them. But Taiho had anticipated this. The construction sites were scattered across Earth, hidden in mountains and underground. The Vraxians found and destroyed some, but others remained hidden, and every day more ships were completed. As the second Vraxian fleet approached Earth, Something changed in the galaxy. Minho's broadcasts had reached enslaved worlds. They heard about Earth's resistance. They heard about human victories. They heard that the mighty Vraxian Empire needed reinforcements to conquer one primitive planet. Hope, which had been dead in the galaxy for centuries, flickered back to life. The Vraxians were about to learn a painful lesson. They had started a war they couldn't win quickly, and every day it continued, Earth grew stronger while the Empire's reputation weakened. Commander Velroth prepared for the final assault, confident that overwhelming force would end this. He still didn't understand that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was the refusal to accept defeat, no matter the odds. 6 months into the war, humanity launched its first faster-than-light warship. The Indomitable looked nothing like the sleek Vraxian vessels. It was a patchwork of human and alien technology, welded together by desperate engineers who had worked around the clock. But when Captain Suji Nam gave the order to engage the FTL drive, the ship vanished from Earth's orbit and reappeared 3 light-years away. "We did it," Suji said quietly, staring at the alien stars outside her window. Her crew of 200 volunteers cheered. They all knew this was likely a one-way trip, but that didn't matter. Earth needed time, and they would buy it with their lives if necessary. Behind them, 49 more ships prepared to follow. Some were converted cargo vessels. Others were military ships retrofitted with stolen technology. All of them were crewed by people who understood they were humanity's first offensive strike against an empire that had never been challenged. Jiho Bayek, the chief engineer, monitored the systems nervously. "The FTL drive is stable for now, but I can't guarantee it'll work for the return trip. We pushed the technology beyond what it was designed for." "Then we make sure the trip matters," Suji replied. Their target was a Vraxian supply depot, 3 weeks away from Earth. Intelligence gathered by Minho had revealed that the Empire's logistics relied on central supply stations. Destroying even one would disrupt operations across dozens of systems. Meanwhile, on Earth, a different kind of war was being fought. Hijin Song stood before a captured Vraxian communications array, preparing to broadcast a message to the galaxy. The young diplomat had convinced the United Earth Council to try something unprecedented, reaching out to other enslaved species. "We know you're listening," Hijin said into the transmitter. "We know you've been conquered. We know you've been told resistance is hopeless. But Earth is still fighting. After 6 months, the Vraxian Empire still hasn't defeated us. If we can fight back, so can you. You're not alone anymore." The message broadcast across Vraxian space, bypassing their censorship thanks to Minho's hacking. On dozens of worlds, enslaved species heard it. Most dismissed it as propaganda. But some listened. Some wondered. Some hoped. The Indomitable reached the supply depot without incident. Suji studied the facility through her scanners. It was lightly defended, only 10 Vraxian warships. The Empire had never needed heavy protection for their logistics. No one had ever dared attack them behind their own lines. "All ships, weapons ready," Suji ordered. "Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to hurt them." The human fleet attacked without warning. Missiles streaked across space, targeting the depot's fuel storage. The Vraxian defenders scrambled to respond, but they were unprepared for human tactics. While some ships engaged the defenders, others flew past them entirely, focusing on destroying infrastructure. The fuel storage exploded in a brilliant flash. The depot's docking bays were next, then the repair facilities. By the time the Vraxian reinforcements arrived, the depot was burning wreckage and the human ships had scattered in different directions. Suji's ship took heavy damage during the escape. 2 crew members died, and the FTL drive was critically damaged. But they had accomplished their mission. The Vraxian supply chain was broken, and 50 of their ships now had to choose between pursuing the human fleet or protecting other facilities. Back on Earth, Yuna led squadrons in a different kind of battle. The second Vraxian fleet had arrived, bringing overwhelming numbers. But Taiho's strategy was working. Instead of defending cities, human forces made the Vraxians fight for every inch of ground. Buildings became fortresses. Tunnels became ambush points. Every street was a potential battlefield. Doyun's special forces had become legendary. They appeared out of nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before the Vraxians could respond. They sabotaged alien equipment, freed prisoners, and spread fear among enemy troops. The Vraxians had never experienced psychological warfare like this. Their soldiers started seeing threats everywhere. Junho continued analyzing alien technology, making new discoveries daily. He realized that Vraxian ships were incredibly efficient but lacked redundancy. Human ships had backup systems for their backup systems. Vraxian ships were designed for perfection, which meant a single critical failure could cripple an entire vessel. "We need to target their central processors," Junho explained to Taiho. "Every ship has one. It controls all major systems. If we can destroy it, the ship becomes a floating metal box." Jiwoo made an even more interesting discovery. She had been studying captured Vraxians for months and noticed something about their hive mind structure. When isolated from other Vraxians, individual soldiers became increasingly distressed. It wasn't just about following orders. They literally needed connection to their collective consciousness. "What if we jammed their mental network?" she suggested. "Force them to operate as individuals instead of a collective." Minho took that idea and ran with it. He designed a device that broadcast interference on the same frequency the Vraxians used for their mental communication. The first field test was dramatic. A Vraxian patrol suddenly stopped moving, their soldiers confused and disoriented. Human forces captured them without firing a shot. But the Vraxian Empire was learning too. Overlord Thranix, the new commander, was smarter than Velroth. He studied human tactics and began adapting. He stopped sending predictable patrols. He fortified positions instead of spreading forces thin. He started using overwhelming firepower on suspected human positions, not caring about collateral damage. Earth's casualties climbed. Entire cities were destroyed. Millions more died. The survivors retreated to underground bunkers, living like refugees on their own planet. Hijin's broadcast continued, and something remarkable happened. On a distant world called Draal, enslaved aliens listened to Earth's defiance and made a choice. They sabotaged their own mining facility, disrupting Vraxian ore production. It was a small act, barely noticeable in the vast empire, but it was the first act of rebellion in a century. The Vraxian High Council noticed. They sent troops to Draal to suppress the uprising. Those troops had to come from somewhere. They came from the Earth Invasion Force. Taeho smiled when he heard the news. "It's working," he said. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for the entire galaxy. The Indomitable returned to Earth, barely functional. Half its crew was dead, and the ship would never fly again. But Suji brought back something precious: intelligence on Vraxian military deployments. She had mapped their supply routes, identified their weak points, and proven that humanity could strike anywhere in the galaxy. "We need more ships," Suji told the council. "Better ones. We can't win by defending Earth. We have to make the Empire defend everything." Junho agreed. "Give me 3 months and resources, and I can build 100 ships. Real warships, not converted cargo haulers." "You have 2 months," Taiho said. "Thranix is planning something big. I can see it in their troop movements." Minho confirmed it. His intercepts showed massive Vraxian forces gathering near Earth. Not just ships, but planet-killer weapons. Thranix wasn't interested in conquest anymore. He wanted Earth destroyed as an example to the galaxy. "How long until they're ready?" Yuna asked. 3 weeks, Minho replied grimly. The United Earth Council made a decision that shocked everyone. They would evacuate Earth. Not surrender, evacuate. Every person who could be moved would be sent to underground bunkers on the Moon, Mars, and hidden facilities in the asteroid belt. Earth would become a trap. "They want to destroy our planet," Taiho said to the council. "Let them come. Let them waste their planet-killer weapons on an empty world. While they're congratulating themselves, we'll attack their homeworld." The plan was insane, suicidal, impossible. But humanity had already done the impossible by surviving this long. 72 hours before Thranix's deadline, the evacuation began. It was the largest refugee movement in human history. 3 billion people moved in secret, using every transport available. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were abandoned. Monuments, museums, and homes were left behind. Junho's fleet was ready. 200 ships, crude and dangerous, but armed with the deadliest weapons humanity could design. Every pilot knew the mission. While Threnix destroyed Earth, they would strike at Vraxia Prime, the enemy homeworld. Yuna would lead the attack. Suji would command the flagship. Dohyun's special forces would land on the planet itself. It was a desperate gamble, but desperation had become humanity's greatest strength. Hyejin made one final broadcast before leaving Earth. To every species listening, Earth stands empty today. Not because we surrendered, but because we refuse to let our planet be a target. The Vraxians think they've won, but they're about to learn what happens when you corner a species that has nothing left to lose. We're coming for them. All of them. Threnix's fleet arrived at Earth exactly on schedule. He looked at the planet with satisfaction. The defiant humans would finally be silenced. He gave the order, and planet-killer weapons charged. Energy beams struck Earth, carving massive scars across continents. Oceans boiled. Mountains were leveled. The planet that had resisted for 6 months was devastated in minutes. Thranix watched the destruction and declared victory, but his celebration was short-lived. Reports came in from across the Empire. Human ships were appearing everywhere. Supply depots were under attack. Patrol routes were ambushed. And most shocking of all, a human fleet had appeared above Vraxia Prime itself. Impossible, Thranix said, staring at the reports. How did they? Then he understood. The humans had sacrificed their own planet to attack his. They had turned defeat into offense. They had done what no species in galactic history had ever done. Yuna's voice broadcast across all Vraxian channels. You wanted to see how humans fight. You wanted to break us. Now watch what happens when you take everything from us. We don't surrender. We attack. 200 human ships, filled with people who had just watched their homeworld burn, descended on the Vraxian homeworld with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. The Vraxian Empire was about to face Earth's fury. The Vraxian homeworld had never been attacked. For 10,000 years, Vraxia Prime had been the untouchable heart of an empire that spanned hundreds of star systems. Its orbital defenses were designed to intimidate, not to actually fight. No one had ever dared challenge them. Until now. Yuna's fleet appeared in orbit like vengeful ghosts. 200 human ships, battered and crude, faced thousands of Vraxian defenders. The odds were impossible. The Vraxians outnumbered them 50-1. But Yuna had learned something important during 6 months of war. Numbers only mattered if you fought the way your enemy expected. All ships, scatter formation, she ordered. Don't engage their main fleet. Target the defense stations. Human ships broke in every direction, moving unpredictably. Vraxian ships tried to form defensive formations, but their rigid tactics couldn't adapt fast enough. While the main Vraxian fleet maneuvered into position, human missiles streaked past them, slamming into orbital weapons platforms. Suji commanded the flagship Defiance, coordinating the chaos. Group 3 hit the northern defense grid. Group 5 suppressed their communication satellites. Everyone else keep them confused. On the planet's surface, the Vraxian military scrambled to respond. This had never happened before. They had protocols for defending occupied worlds, but no protocols for defending their own homeworld. Officers shouted conflicting orders. Units deployed to random positions. The perfect machine of the Empire stuttered. Dohyun's transport ship plunged through the atmosphere, dodging defensive fire. Inside, his special forces team prepared for the most dangerous mission of the war. Their target was the Imperial Palace, where the Vraxian Empress commanded her empire. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot announced. They're going to shoot us down. Then land fast, Dohyun replied calmly. The transport crashed more than landed, tearing through a ceremonial garden. Dohyun's team poured out, weapons ready. Vraxian guards rushed to intercept them, but the aliens had never trained for close-quarters combat. Dohyun's soldiers moved through them like experienced fighters handling amateurs. In orbit, the battle became a slaughter, but not the way the Vraxians expected. Human ships were dying. 60, 70, 80 vessels destroyed, but each one took several Vraxian ships with them. Some human pilots, their ships crippled, deliberately crashed into enemy vessels. Others detonated their reactors next to Vraxian command ships. The Vraxians had never seen warfare like this. Species that were losing surrendered. They didn't turn their own deaths into weapons. Yuna's fighter took a direct hit, systems failing. Instead of ejecting, she aimed her dying ship at a Vraxian carrier and maxed her engines. "For Earth," she whispered, and crashed into the carrier's bridge at supersonic speed. The carrier exploded, taking 3 nearby ships with it. Yuna's sacrifice created a gap in the Vraxian formation that human ships immediately exploited. On Earth's moon, Junho monitored the battle from a hidden command center. Beside him, Hana tracked communications while Minho executed his most ambitious hack yet. He was inside the Vraxian central network, uploading a virus that would spread across their entire empire. "Minho, status?" Taiho asked from his own terminal. "Almost there," Minho replied, fingers flying across his keyboard. "Once this uploads, every enslaved species will know exactly where the Vraxian military is stationed, where their weaknesses are, and how to hurt them." "Do it," Taiho ordered. "End their monopoly on information." The virus uploaded. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of occupied worlds, enslaved species suddenly received detailed intelligence on their oppressors. Ship movements, supply routes, military protocols, everything. On Vraxia Prime, Doyun's team fought their way into the Imperial Palace. The architecture was beautiful, designed to inspire awe and submission. The team didn't care. They moved room by room, neutralizing guards. The Vraxians fought bravely, but they were soldiers trained for space combat and occupation duty. Dohyun's team had trained for urban warfare, hostage rescue, and impossible missions. Jiwoo's research proved crucial. The interference devices they carried disrupted the Vraxian hive mind, making the guards slow and confused. Individual Vraxians were dangerous. Isolated, confused Vraxians were vulnerable. "Contact, throne room ahead," one soldier reported. They breached the massive doors to find the Vraxian Empress surrounded by her elite guard. She was old by Vraxian standards, her carapace scarred from ancient battles. She stared at the humans with cold, ancient eyes. "You cannot win," she said in perfect English, her voice like grinding metal. "Kill me, and 1,000 fleets will turn your species to ash." Dohyun lowered his weapon slightly. "We're not here to kill you." The Empress looked confused, the first time Dohyun had seen a Vraxian show uncertainty. "Then why come?" "We're taking you hostage," Dohyun said simply. The concept was so alien to Vraxian thinking that the Empress and her guards froze. In their empire, leaders either won or died. Surrender was impossible. Capture was unthinkable. The idea of taking an enemy leader alive, of using them as leverage, had never occurred to them. That moment of confusion was all Do-hyun needed. His team moved with practiced precision. Stun weapons fired, guards collapsed. Within seconds, the Empress was bound and secured. "All teams, we have the package," Do-hyun transmitted. "Extraction now." In orbit, Suji received the message and couldn't believe it. They actually did it. They captured their Empress. She immediately broadcast on all frequencies, Vraxian and human. "Attention all Vraxian forces. We have captured your Empress. Cease fire immediately, or we will broadcast her capture to every world in your empire. Show your subjects that their invincible rulers can be defeated, can be captured, can be humiliated." The Vraxian fleet hesitated. For the first time in 10,000 years, they didn't know what to do. Orders from the High Council contradicted orders from field commanders. Some ships ceased fire. Others continued attacking. The perfect unity of the Empire cracked. But Overlord Thranix, still at Earth, refused to accept the situation. He had just destroyed humanity's homeworld. He would not let that victory be stolen by impossible tactics. "All ships, ignore the hostage situation," Thranix commanded. "The Empress is acceptable collateral damage. Destroy the human fleet. Destroy their bases. Destroy everything." Thranix's fleet, still at Earth's orbit, began moving toward the Moon and Mars, where human refugees hid. His planet-killer weapons recharged, ready to finish what he started. Taiho watched the approaching fleet on his monitors. Thranix has gone rogue. He's ignoring the Empress's capture. He's going to kill everyone. How long until he reaches our positions? Junho asked. 4 hours. Hana checked her communications array. Wait, I'm detecting something. Multiple FTL signatures. Ships are arriving in system. Lots of ships. The sensors showed hundreds of vessels appearing from faster-than-light travel. But they weren't Vraxian ships. They were crewed vessels using stolen technology. Ships from the Draal system. Ships from other occupied worlds. Species that had been enslaved for decades, even centuries, arriving at Earth. Hijin's broadcasts had worked. Minho's intelligence dump had worked. Across the galaxy, rebellions had started. And now, those rebels were coming to Earth's defense. This is Captain Rahl of the Draal Liberation Fleet, a transmission came through. We received your message. We saw your fight. You showed us that resistance is possible. Now we fight beside you. More transmissions followed. From the Kelter, from the Vorns, from species whose names humans had never heard. All of them bringing ships, weapons, and warriors. The Vraxian Empire had believed their subjects were too beaten down to fight. They were wrong. Earth had shown the galaxy that defiance was possible. Now that defiance was spreading like wildfire, Taiho allowed himself a small smile. All allied ships, welcome. We're about to face a Vraxian fleet led by a commander who doesn't care about the rules anymore. He's willing to destroy everything to claim victory. Then we destroy him first, Captain Rahl replied. On Vraxia Prime, Doyun brought the Empress to a secured location and removed her restraints just enough to communicate. Order your fleets to stand down. End this war. We'll return you unharmed. The Empress studied the human with those ancient eyes. Why haven't you killed me? I would have killed you without hesitation. Because we're better than you, Dohyun said simply. We don't conquer, we don't enslave, we defend. And when we're pushed too far, we push back. But we don't become monsters to fight monsters. For the first time in thousands of years, the Vraxian Empress felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. Not of death. Death she understood. Fear of being wrong. Fear that her empire had been built on a lie. Fear that these impossible creatures, these humans, might actually be superior in ways that mattered. What do you want? She asked quietly. Peace, Dohyun replied. Real peace, freedom for every enslaved world, an end to your empire's expansion, coexistence instead of domination. And if I refuse? Then we broadcast your capture. We show the galaxy that the mighty Vraxian Empire couldn't even protect their empress. Every occupied world will rise up. Your empire will burn from within, and we'll make sure it does. The Empress made her decision. She activated her emergency communicator and spoke with absolute authority. All Vraxian forces, this is Empress Kalara. Cease all military operations immediately. Open diplomatic channels with the humans. We are negotiating a settlement. But Thranix heard that order and rejected it. The Empress is compromised. I am taking command. All ships, continue the attack. The Vraxian fleet split. Half followed the Empress's orders. Half followed Thranix. The unified empire shattered. Above Earth's moon, the final battle was about to begin. Human survivors, allied rebels, and loyal Vraxian ships on one side. Thranix's rogue fleet on the other. And in the center, humanity's last defenders prepared to protect the refugees of a broken world. The war for Earth was ending. The war for the galaxy was just beginning. The space around Earth's moon became the stage for the galaxy's future. Thranix commanded 3,000 warships, determined to finish what he started. Against him stood a mixed fleet of humans, Draal, Keltar, Vorns, and dozens of other species that had suffered under Vraxian rule. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and flying ships held together with determination and improvised repairs. But they had something Thranix's fleet lacked. They were fighting for freedom, not orders. All ships, this is Suji. We hold this line. Behind us are 3 billion refugees. If we fail, they die. So we don't fail. The fleets collided in a storm of weapons fire and explosions. Thranix's ships fought with mechanical precision, following perfect formations. The Allied fleet fought with chaos and creativity, using every trick they had learned in months of desperate warfare. Taiho coordinated the defense from the Lunar Command Center, his strategic mind processing hundreds of data points simultaneously. He saw patterns in Thranix's formations, predictability in their attacks. Minho, can you access Thranix's flagship? Taiho asked. The hacker was already trying. Their security is tighter than anything I've seen, but I'm finding a way. Give me 5 minutes. You have 3, Taiho replied, watching another Allied ship explode on his monitors. On Vraxia Prime, Doyun kept the Empress under guard while watching the battle through transmitted feeds. Beside him, Jiwoo studied Vraxian psychology, trying to understand what would make them abandon their loyalty to Thranix. They follow strength, Jiwoo said. The Vraxians respect power above everything. If we can make Thranix look weak, his own fleet might turn on him. Doyun had an idea. Empress Kalara, would your loyal ships follow an order to disable Thranix's fleet? They would, she replied. But Thranix commands the bulk of our military. My loyalists are outnumbered. What if we gave them an advantage? Dohyun suggested. In the Lunar Command Center, Minho broke through Thranix's security. I'm in. What do you need? Broadcast his communications to the entire fleet, Taiho ordered. Let everyone hear what he's really saying. Minho tapped keys furiously, and suddenly every ship in the battle could hear Thranix's private communications. They heard him ordering his captains to sacrifice their own ships as distractions. They heard him calling his soldiers worthless if they failed. They heard him saying the Empress was weak and should be eliminated. The Vraxian crews, raised to respect hierarchy and honor, heard their commanders speak with contempt and cowardice. The perfect image of the military overlord cracked. Thranix doesn't care about the Empire, Empress Kalara broadcast on all channels. He cares about his own glory. He's willing to destroy loyal Vraxian ships to feed his ego. Is this the leader you want to follow? Ships in Thranix's fleet began to hesitate. Some stopped firing. Others actively moved away from the battle. The unified force began to fragment. In orbit above Earth, the rebel fleet pressed their advantage. Captain Ral of the Draal led his ships in a daring assault on Thranix's flank. The Keltar fighters, small and fast, harassed larger vessels. Human ships continued their tradition of turning defeat into weapons. Damaged vessels became missiles. Dying ships became shields for others. Suji's flagship was critically damaged, life support failing. She could have retreated, but Thranix's command ship was exposed. She made her choice. All remaining power to engines, she ordered her crew. Evacuate to escape pods. I'm taking us in. Captain, you'll die, Jiho protested. We're all dying, Suji replied calmly. Question is whether our deaths matter. Get to the pods. That's an order. Her crew reluctantly evacuated while Suji stayed at the helm, guiding her broken ship toward Thranix's massive flagship. The Overlord saw her coming and ordered all weapons to fire. Energy beams and missiles tore through the Defiance, but Suji had chosen her angle perfectly. The ship wouldn't be stopped. At the last moment, she transmitted one final message. For Earth, for the galaxy, for everyone who refused to kneel. The Defiance struck Thranix's flagship like a hammer. The explosion was visible from the lunar surface, a brief new star in the sky. When the light faded, both ships were gone. Overlord Thranix, who had thought himself the galaxy's master, died without ever understanding the species he tried to conquer. The battle ended quickly after that. Thranix's remaining ships, leaderless and demoralized, surrendered. Some fled to distant systems. Others joined the Empress's loyalists. The mighty Vraxian war machine, which had seemed unstoppable, simply stopped. In the quiet after the battle, Taiho stood on the lunar surface in an environmental suit, looking at the scarred Earth below. Junho joined him, equally silent. We won, Junho said finally. We survived, Taiho corrected. Winning comes next. The negotiations took 3 months. Empress Kalara, faced with rebellions on 50 worlds and her military divided, had no choice but to accept human terms. The Vraxian Empire would release all occupied worlds. They would pay reparations. They would allow the formation of a galactic coalition of free worlds, with Earth and Varaxia Prime as equal members. Hyejin led the human diplomatic team, turning humanity's military victory into lasting peace. She was brilliant, tireless, and absolutely committed to ensuring no species would ever be enslaved again. Do-hyun escorted the Empress during the negotiations, and over time, something unexpected happened. The ancient ruler began to respect the young human soldier. He had captured her, held her hostage, but never mistreated her. He had shown strength without cruelty, victory without vengeance. "Your species is strange," she told him one day. "You fight like demons, but negotiate like philosophers. You destroy without hate. I don't understand you." "Understanding comes with time," Do-hyun replied. "We're all learning." 3 years passed. Earth slowly healed. The scars from Threnix's bombardment remained, but life returned. Cities rebuilt. Forests grew in the blast zones. Humanity proved as resilient in peace as they had been in war. The Galactic Coalition grew to include 47 liberated worlds. Junho and Jiho led the technology exchange program, sharing innovations across species. Varaxian shield technology merged with human kinetic weapons. Drawl faster-than-light drives improved human ship designs. Keltar medical knowledge saved countless lives. Una Park was honored as a hero across the galaxy, though she didn't live to see it. Her sacrifice at Varaxia Prime inspired songs, monuments, and a new generation of pilots. The Una Park Academy trained defenders from every member species, teaching them that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was fighting despite it. Minho established the Galactic Communications Network, ensuring no world would ever be isolated or silenced again. Information flowed freely between systems. Propaganda became impossible. Truth became the foundation of the new order. Jiwoo and Hyejin worked together on the Cultural Exchange Initiative, helping species understand each other. The Varaxians learned that strength could come from diversity. The Drawl learned that they were no longer slaves. Humanity learned they weren't alone in valuing freedom. Suji Nam became a legend. Stories of her sacrifice spread across the galaxy, told in 100 different languages. The Coalition's flagship bore her name, a reminder that sometimes one person's courage could change history. Taiho retired from military service and became an advisor to the Coalition Council. His strategic mind, once focused on survival, now worked on building something better than what existed before. He taught young leaders from every species that war should always be the last option, but when necessary, should be fought with absolute commitment. Hana continued monitoring deep space, watching for threats. The galaxy was safer, but not safe. New dangers existed beyond Coalition space. She made sure humanity and its allies would never be caught unprepared again. Do-hyun did something unexpected. He became an ambassador to Varaxia Prime, working with reformed Varaxians to build a new kind of empire, one based on cooperation instead of conquest. Empress Kalara supported the transformation, knowing her species had to change or become irrelevant. Earth itself became a symbol, the scarred planet that refused to surrender. Millions visited each year, walking through the ruins left by Threnix's bombardment, seeing monuments to human resistance. The message was clear. Determination could overcome any odds. On the 10th anniversary of the war's end, representatives from every coalition species gathered on Earth's moon. They stood where the final battle had been fought, where Suji had made her sacrifice, where freedom had been won through blood and courage. Taiho spoke to the assembly, his voice carrying across the lunar plane through countless translators. 10 years ago, the Varaxian Empire came to Earth expecting an easy conquest. They saw a divided species, primitive technology, and assumed we would surrender or die quickly. They were wrong. Not because we were stronger, we weren't. Not because we were smarter, we weren't. They were wrong because they misunderstood what drives humanity, what drives any species that values freedom. He paused, looking at the diverse crowd. Humans, Varaxians, Drail, Keltar, and dozens of others. We fight hardest when we have nothing to lose. We stand tallest when pressed down. We grow strongest when tested. The Vraxians tried to conquer Earth, but instead, they taught us something valuable. They taught us we weren't alone. They showed us there were others suffering under tyranny. And by trying to break us, they gave us the strength to break their empire and build something better. We didn't conquer them through superior force. We conquered them through superior ideals. Freedom, dignity, the refusal to accept oppression. Those ideals spread faster than any fleet, hit harder than any weapon, and built stronger bonds than any empire. Empress Kalara stood and spoke next, her voice humble in a way no Vraxian empress had been before. My empire ruled for 10,000 years through fear and power. We thought we were invincible. Then we met humanity and learned we were wrong about everything. The humans didn't just defeat us, they improved us. They showed us a better way. For that, I am grateful. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for everyone who died in the war. Millions of humans. Hundreds of thousands of Vraxians. Countless others. Each death a tragedy, but each sacrifice ensuring future generations could live in freedom. As the crowd dispersed, Junho stood alone, looking at Earth. The blue planet gleamed in the sunlight, beautiful despite its scars. We really did it, he said to himself. Hana appeared beside him. We survived. Humanity always survives. More than that, Junho replied. We changed the galaxy. The Vraxians tried to conquer Earth, but instead, humanity conquered hate with hope, tyranny with freedom, and empire with alliance. That's a better victory than any military triumph. Far out in deep space, beyond coalition borders, other empires watched and learned. Some saw opportunity. Others saw warning. All understood that the galaxy had changed. The age of easy conquest had ended. The age of free worlds had begun. And at the center of it all was Earth, scarred, resilient, and unconquered. A small blue planet whose people refused to kneel, refused to break, and refused to let others suffer in silence. The Vraxians tried to conquer Earth. Instead, humanity conquered them all. Not through force of arms, but through force of will. Not by building an empire, but by destroying one and replacing it with something better. The galaxy would never be the same. And humanity, once alone and vulnerable, now stood among the stars as liberators, defenders, and proof that no tyranny could withstand a species willing to fight for freedom, not just their own, but everyone's. The war was over. The future had just begun.